Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our MASSP webinar with our friends from College Board. I know we have some people coming in from the waiting room, so we'll give you a couple more moments and then we will get started. My name is Ryan Casey and I'm part of the MASSP team. I see a couple of familiar names on here today. So welcome back. If you are returning from some other webinars, we do these almost once a week, I feel like, throughout the school year. If this is your first one, welcome. We hope you enjoy your time online with us today. As you are coming in, if you could please do me a favor and just hop on the chat and just introduce yourself. Give us your name, your role, what school district or organization you are with, and then maybe a hope or a want or a question that you might have regarding our AP Precalc conversation today. We have people on standby kind of checking the chat. One note, you want to make sure that you have it set to respond to everyone and not just the hosts and panelists. And I'm opening up the chat. I see my buddy Paul is already on there. Thanks for being with us, Paul. Again, if you are just coming on right now, we're just having people introduce themselves in the chat so we can get to know who is with us today. While you are doing that, just a reminder that this is a webinar, so even though your cameras are off, we do want to be able to engage with you and make sure we are getting all of your questions answered. So the best way for us to answer your questions is to use the Q&A system. You can pop your question in there. Chances are, if you are thinking it, someone else on the group is thinking of that as well. So make sure you put your questions there. You can even hit the little thumbs up button and upvote that. That'll help us prioritize those questions and make sure we get them all answered before you leave today. We might be able to stop and answer those live. Otherwise, we might type an answer or response to make sure your question gets answered as well. Otherwise, we will use the chat to just share ideas or share comments. All right, so Q&A for questions, the chat for just sharing of thoughts, ideas, comments. And just a reminder, we will send a copy of the slide deck and the presentation you're going to see today out, as well as a copy of this video recording. I'm almost always able to get those out within about 24 hours. So you should have those by tomorrow, Friday, and you can share that with maybe others from your team. We always put this disclaimer in here. It's usually more related and relevant to some of our legal webinars that we do with the different attorneys and stuff for some school law guidance. But just a reminder that because you can come back and watch these webinars at a later date and time, just know that some of the information might change, right? Maybe not a week out or a month out, but if you're checking this out a year from now, some of the information might change. So just be mindful of that. This is accurate as of today, March 5th. And if you enjoy this webinar, I mentioned earlier, we do a ton of webinars with different partners here at MASSP. We do have some additional webinars coming up in March and into April with special education law, a webinar on the public school retirement system. Into April, we're going to talk about some alternatives to suspension for students dealing with tobacco cessation. And then we'll even have some additional legal ones in April as well. And you'll eventually be able to find this webinar and other past webinars on the MASSP.com website. So that is all for me. I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Bestie from College Board, and I'll let him introduce the rest of the panelist team that's joining us. Dennis has been on, I think, just about all of these College Board webinars, so we appreciate our partnership with College Board and all that they do for our schools in Michigan. So, Dennis, I will stop sharing, and I will let you take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Right. Welcome, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're looking forward to talk more about this course, AP Precalculus, and really have your questions answered. We want to make sure that we utilize this time that you have a full understanding. So please, kind of like Ryan mentioned, if you have questions, if you need anything, don't hesitate to drop it in that chat. So let's start. My name is Dennis. I know some of you, I recognize some of you, some of your names from the chat. It's wonderful seeing you. If you don't know me, my name is Dennis Bestie, and I serve as the director of K through 12 here in the state of Michigan, really just supporting all the districts here, making sure, again, that you feel supported, that you have the resources that you need. And then I'm also joined here by two wonderful individuals who are really well versed in AP Precalculus, Lee Notaro and Kelly Hemmerling. Do you guys mind both introducing yourselves?
Sure, I'll start first since I'm on the screen first there before Kelly. My name is Lee Notaro, and I am the director for AP Precalculus. I started at the College Board in September of 2024, and before that, I had taught in high schools and in a university setting for about 31 years.
Hi, I'm Kelly Hemmerling. I teach at Milford High School. This is my 20th year here. I've taught really everything from Algebra 1 through AP Calculus, and I'm also a College Board professional learning consultant for AP Calculus, AB, and AP Precalculus. I've also co-authored some materials for AP Precalculus as well.
Yeah, man, that is a crazy amount. If you add up all those years, that is a crazy amount of experience and a lot of expertise. So again, please lean into those questions. This is a great time to ask those. So just looking at today of what we're trying to do and what our objectives are, is we want to have everybody here in the audience understand how AP Precalculus enhances student learning opportunities. We'll cover some content and look at outcomes for the course. We'll look at different supports and resources that are out there for students. I saw someone in the chat asking about that, so making sure that you have a good grasp on that. And we also have some new revelations, some new news that we can share too, which I think is really exciting. And just gain some insights from Kelly and from Lee, just that different perspective that they have from actually doing it and really developing it too when we talk about Lee. But before we dive into pre-calc, what we like to do is just set a basic groundwork, right? So find a commonality. What are we all really trying to do in the K through 12 space and beyond, right? We're all trying to connect students to their future. We want to open more doors. We want to instill them with confidence and really allow them to see themselves in a place that maybe they haven't seen themselves before. Now, we all know, we all work with high school students. We understand that today is probably the biggest day of their life, right? Sometimes their view can be so small, but how do we have them step back, right? How do we give them an opportunity to step back and see that bigger picture and help them realize that what they're deciding to do now, what they're exposing, the knowledge and skills that they're gaining now can really connect to their future and their opportunities tomorrow. And so looking at AP overall, I think these are all things that we know and all benefits that we see. And these are some of the more common things, right? Standing out for colleges in terms of where you want to go and what they're looking for in an accepted student. Succeeding in college, right? This is college and career coursework, so it really helps them prepare and get more comfortable with college career coursework. And then also time and money, right? There's a whole conversation about how much college is costing. So what are some ways that we can help individuals, help families really overcome those financial burdens? And AP can help them do that. But we like to dive a little bit deeper, right? Like that's definitely the top line of why AP is important. But something that I always like to hit on is that participation matters, right? Threes, fours, fives, those matter for sure. But I also like to point this out. If you think about what we're trying to do with these students, right? Sometimes, again, if you think about high school students, they see that 12th grade as that's the end. When honestly, that's the beginning. So in that 9 through 12, in that K through 12 space, how can we help them do better after or once they really start that race that we call life? And we have some research that shows that AP can benefit these individuals beyond that K through 12 space, right? We can see that if you go or students go from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2, there are so many things that benefit these students, whether that's them performing better in post-secondary education or them persisting, right? Those are both things and challenges that we're trying to set our students up for success. And AP can do that. We have tons of research to support that. And also thinking about participation. Again, a lot of time we hone in on the college connection, and that is definitely one of those benefits. But what else are we doing with AP, right? We're strengthening their ability to handle rigorous coursework, right? That we're giving them exposure to something that If you are familiar with universities, a lot of universities have these things called bridge programs where students are admitted in the summer to get exposure and to help them set up for success in the fall semester. And that's what AP can serve as, that exposure to them. It helps them strengthen the ability to manage time and really just believe in themselves that they belong here. And again, digging a little bit deeper, I really like to show this data point here. What it shows is that in the blue are individuals who have taken an AP exam, and in the gray are individuals who have not. But these are students who are similar in terms of their performance academically. And so you can see at the individuals who have scored a 5 or 4 or a 3, those students are more likely to attend a four-year institution. But what I always like to point out is the benefits for even 1s and 2s. Again, 3, 4s, and 5s, typically that puts you in the range. And I'll show you a chart a little bit later for AP Pre-Calc. But it'll put you in the range for earning college credit, which I think is really great. But even 1s and 2s, right? Students that you're giving exposure to, students that you're helping instill this confidence, they are more likely than their similarly performing academic peers to go on to four-year institution. And that's because you're exposing them. That's because you're telling them you belong here. And then same on that same line, you can think about this. So those students are more likely to go on to four-year institutions, but they're also more likely to do better. So an individual who earned a 1 or a 2 in an AP exam, if they take another one, they're more likely to do better, which makes sense, right? I always think about driving, right? The first time I was driving, I was super nervous, but the more I did it, the better I got. So they're more likely to take another AP exam. They're more likely to do more college and career work, and they're more likely to do better. So those are all positives. These are all trajectories that we want to put our students on. And what we can see, or what we have been seeing, is that AP has been doing that within the state of Michigan, which is really great. Here's some wonderful data points that we want to highlight, is that we've seen a 12.3 increase in AP participation, which I think is really good. And then again, think about that. Not only are some of those individuals earning college credit, but some of those individuals are going on to post-secondary education when maybe before they're taking an AP course, they might not. And then think about these other demographics, right? 28% of Black students or 26% of Latino students. We're seeing an increase in these populations that for some districts, it may be a little bit harder to move those needles, right? So how are we speaking to all populations? How are we opening the door to all students? And AP can do that. And then also look at low income or individuals or students who qualify for a fee reduction. That's 35% increase. These are all demographics that we love seeing improvements in. And then, as you guys know, we have a ton of opportunities, right? With all these students who are who are enrolling into career and college coursework, getting that exposure and impacting their future, they have all these different options. And one thing that we wanted to highlight is that we're increasing those options. On the far right, you can see that Career Kickstarter is the column. These are new courses that we're rolling out in 26-27. We have AP Business with Personal Finance. We have AP Cybersecurity. And then in 27-28, we have AP Networking. But all of these options, all of these courses are opportunities to impact and change a student's life. But we're all here for AP Precalculus. And so we'll start talking about that. And these are some things that we want everybody to know. That first is the most important. Again, thinking about opening doors, thinking about who we're serving in terms of our districts. We want to serve all students, and AP Precalculus is for all students. It helps individuals build that confidence. Again, I think it is just that invite. I think we've all been in that space where, we're a teenager in high school, and then we had someone invite us to something, whether it's a social thing or a club or whatever it may be. And how does that impact you? How does that make you feel? So how can we make individuals feel invited to this space too? And then another thing that we want to do is make sure that you guys are notified of all the resources or aware of all the resources that exist out there. Because a lot of data and research that we have, that these resources can not only support you, but support the success of your students. And so anytime we start talking about AP Precalculus, we always get posed a couple questions. And one of those questions is AP Precalculus similar to high school pre-calculus? And so if there's any takeaway that we get or that you get from this, I hope it's this. If you're teaching pre-calculus, or if you're offering pre-calculus within your district, you're offering a college level math course. We should just give them, or really expand opportunities for students and give them an opportunity to earn that college credit. Earlier this week, actually, which is really applicable, I met with a teacher and they were a little skeptical because their administration was asking them to consider AP Precalculus, but they had been teaching Precalculus for years, right? They're very comfortable with it. They understood all the things that they were doing year over year. And I know, I get it. Change is hard, right? Change can be really hard. And if your admin asks you to make a change into this new course, you may be a little skeptical, you may be a little hesitant. It was a 30-minute call. I sat down with her. I shared the course framework. And honestly, this is really common, but she took, I don't know, 2 minutes to look at that course framework, just saw the titles of the each section of each unit. And she said, well, this is about 90% of what I'm doing anyways. And that's kind of the realization that we want all pre-calculus teachers to have, is that your pre-calculus that you're teaching is AP Precalculus. The types of functions are the same. The resources are the same. We'll talk about textbooks a little bit later. The practices are the same, and the progressions are the same. There's so many similarities. Like I mentioned, she said 90% of what she sees is what she's doing currently. And that's great. We want that transition to be easier. We want individuals to understand that this is an opportunity not only for an easy transition for them to switch from pre-calculus to AP Precalculus, but also to open those doors and provide more opportunities for students. And then the second question, once individuals think, oh man, maybe this is something that I can do, or it's something that I'm already doing. But then they ask, which students should take AP Precalculus? And for that, I'm going to leave it up to the experts. Lee, I'd love for you to dive in there first. You know, as Director of Curriculum and Assessment, can you talk about which students should take AP Precalculus?
Absolutely. So really all students that have successfully completed Algebra 2, or maybe your school has like integrated Math 1, Math 2, Math 3. So after that integrated Math 3, those students should be the ones that should be taking AP Precalculus. So if a student has the understanding of the content that's found in the list of the prerequisites that are in the course and exam description, then they are ready for AP Precalculus. So the course works well for students that are planning to go into STEM courses, and also students that plan to enroll in majors that are not heavy in mathematics. AP Precalculus really is for all students.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that perspective. And Kelly, I really value your perspective too, because you're in the classroom, right? But then you're also supporting other individuals who are either adopting this or trying to sharpen their skills in this as a consultant role. Can you talk about like who you feel like should take this course and who you've seen take this course?
Yeah, so at Milford High School, we piloted the course 3 years ago with just our honors AP honors pre-calculus students that were going to go on and take AP Calculus, AB. So at Huron Valley, that works out great for us because the course definitely has some pre-calculus concepts, but it doesn't have to be a precursor to taking AP Calculus. There's, like Dennis said, everything that's in a regular pre-calculus course, we have in AP Precalculus. So I feel like students that are coming in with skills from Algebra 2 so think of a regular grade level senior. They take the pre-calculus course, they potentially get their AP credit. If they're going on to university and are not thinking of majoring in something that is math related, they have that math credit. So potentially they may never have to take another math course again post-secondary. So the way the course is set up is really kind of beautiful because there are 4 units. The first 3 units are assessed on the exam. So it could be, you have your regular gen ed students, your grade level senior, and the teacher teaches the content in units 1 through 3, or you could also have an advanced course of students that are going on to take Calc A, B, or BC, and the teacher could then go through all 4 units, even though only the first 3 units are assessed. So it really is designed so it can fit both regular grade level students as well as advanced students.
Nice. No, that's wonderful to hear that it is for all students, right? I think a lot of people think of AP and then they just think, well, it's only for those advanced students. But like you mentioned, it is for all students. And also what you touched on too, is something that, tees up this next slide and something that this next slide definitely relates to me. So I was kind of like you were talking about, Kelly, I was a psych major, right? Math was not my jam. And I had to take a college level math course, and I rode the struggle bus the whole semester. It was just tough. I mean, I pulled it off, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but I pulled it off. But it's not uncommon for students to have that college level math as a barrier. If you go to OU, you go to U of M, you go to MSU, whatever it may be, and you talk to those deans and ask them, what's the most common stop out course, right? Stop out course meaning what course did individuals take? They didn't do well, and then they just withdrew from pursuing their 4-year degree or 2-year degree or any degree. And it usually is college level math because it can be really difficult. And so how can we, individuals who work in this K through 12 space, set students up for success? And I think that's one of the things that this course does is allow students to overcome that frustrating barrier in an environment that's more comfortable, something that they know with more support. And they don't have to be like me and be really challenged. And I think about that too. Like I was spending a lot of time on that math course in I think it was my second semester, my freshman year. But then that also meant that I was taking away from these other courses that I had, right? All these other challenges that I had of just adjusting in the freshman year, and then taking all these other courses too. So how can we set students up for success and overcoming that math college barrier, that college level math barrier in high school really helps them do that. So now let's look at the course design. Again, pre-calc, or AP Pre-Calc is for all pre-calc students. And this is another slide that really speaks to me. Just thinking about when I was in 6th grade, I took a placement test and I didn't do well in it. And so I was put on the normal track and out of the advanced track. But I always think about that. Everybody develops a little bit different, right? 6th grade me was different than 8th grade me, which was different than 10th grade me. But I was always placed on that track, and that's where I was. But kind of like Kelly mentioned, whether someone's on that advanced track or someone is on the more typical track, AP Precalculus is for everybody because everybody grows at a different pace, right? Everybody's motivation may not be there at 6th grade, but is there at 9th or 10th grade when they can see that next step coming up for them. And so students who are ready for algebra in middle school can still strive in AP Pre-Calc. And this is just gives you a highlight of what those pathways can look like. There's a lot of different varieties. Every school's a little bit different in how they structure it, and every student can be different on the path that they take. But just for example, you can see that maybe year one is probably a majority of individuals. Year one's going to be the algebra on your freshman, taking geometries as a sophomore, algebra 2 as a junior. And then how do you get exposure and get the opportunity to earn that college level math course? AP Precalculus can be that as a senior. Or maybe you were on that advanced track, right? 8th grade, you took algebra 1, as a freshman, your geometry, junior algebra 2, and then you have other options that you can pursue. So there's a lot of different pathways, a lot of different routes that individuals can take. But for all of those, for those courses that I mentioned, algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2, I think kind of like Lee mentioned, they all set you up for success for this. If you take those 3 courses, you can see that they cover the skills and knowledge that you need to be successful in pre-calc, which is AP Pre-Calc. Whether you're talking about linear functions, whether you're talking about quadratic formula or complex numbers, all of that is covered in this previous math that all the students take. And so they're all prepared for pre-calculus, which again is AP Precalculus. And in this slide, I feel like is the one slide, if this presentation could just be one slide, this would be it. Similar content, right? You can see whether it's high school pre-calculus, AP pre-calculus, or college pre-calculus. It's pretty much they're just cutting and pasted because it's all the same. But Lee, do you mind hopping on and talking a little bit more? You know, I know you work with college partners to design this course. Can you talk about this slide? Can you talk about how high school pre-calculus is similar to AP pre-calculus, which is similar to college pre-calculus?
Yeah, there was a lot of people that were involved in the design of this course, and one of the things that was interesting is that prior to AP Precalculus, there was no one unified document describing really what was meant by pre-calculus. And so the course and exam description took what was common across all college courses and put that into a suggested order, with Unit 1 being polynomial and rational functions, Unit 2 being exponential and logarithmic functions, which is also where inverse functions are first mentioned, tying the exponential and logarithmic functions together. And then, of course, Unit 3 with the trigonometric functions. But the other thing that is interesting, besides just having a suggested order, is that the course and exam description links big ideas like rates of change and changing rates of change and modeling. And many of the concepts that are found in units 1 and 2 are introduced in courses prior to pre-calculus. So a lot of the things that students would see in unit 1 and 2, they might have experienced prior to pre-calculus. And then almost all the content in unit 3 will be new to students in pre-calculus. However, the foundation that is laid in unit 1 and 2 really does set the students up for success in unit 3.
Nice. No, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, just going back to it, it's all similar. And we'd love to share the course framework with you so you can see how similar it is. And 99% of the time, I have that same reaction that I had earlier, where the instructor says, "Oh, this is we're already doing all this," which
Hey,
is what we want
Dennis,
to do.
can
Yeah.
I mention something? I know there's not a lot of like administrators on here. It's a lot of math and consultants and teachers, which makes complete sense. Like just from like a building principal lens, right? It doesn't really make sense. Like we're not in a day and age with staffing and teacher shortages to be able to offer like, oh, we're going to offer just pre-calc or trig, whatever we want to call it, and we're going to offer AP pre-calc, right? Like it just makes sense from utilizing staff and resources. You would offer one course since,
Mm.
as you're demonstrating, the content and the framework is lined up 99% of which, right? And there's so many benefits. I know a lot of schools have moved to different um, grading practices where AP courses are on a 5-point scale, right? And so they're versus a 4-point scale. And so there's just a lot of benefits, and all the research you suggested at the beginning of kids being exposed to this content are much more likely than to consider post-secondary education, right? And so I think it just makes sense that you would take your current pre-calc course and adopt and use AP pre-calculus now instead. And if there are, for people who really are concerned, maybe they just wouldn't take the test, although after they get some exposure and they're being successful, hopefully they would say, oh, I would be a good candidate to take this exam and try and pass and be able to get some credits that way. So I think it just makes sense for a lot of those, even staffing reasons.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thanks for chiming in, Ryan. That's true, right? Like you mentioned, there's a finite amount of resources that every district has, right? How do we maximize that? And this is definitely one of those ways to do it. And I mean, when you think about again the similarities, one thing that we always get asked about are the textbooks, and there's tons of different textbooks out there. You could just Google that, but just understanding how similar the content is, it's nice to know that potentially your current textbook could just be used for AP Precalculus because it's the same thing. But Kelly, you're in the classroom, you see this, you talk to districts all throughout the country. Can you talk about what you've seen with them?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had 3 years of AP Precalculus, and in those first 3 years, we haven't really had any aligned AP aligned materials. So yes, teachers have been using their existing textbooks. Sorry if you just heard my bell ring. I'm at school right now. So teachers have been using their existing textbooks, but because there haven't been specifically AP aligned textbooks, teachers have been sharing tons of materials. We've had consultants making materials and sharing with other consultants who then share, and I'm talking about everything from guided notes to worksheets to formative assessments. So there's a lot of materials out there for teachers to use. And this year, there have been about 3 textbooks that, like just this spring, have come out with AP aligned pre-calculus textbooks. I've been on an advisory team for a couple of them, and I know Lee's been working, hand in hand to make sure that the AP alignment is there. So what I mean by that is the textbooks would have what you would find in a regular pre-calculus course, but then have a section with AP questions, multiple choice or free response questions. So there's a lot of free materials out there that teachers are sharing. And especially if your teachers go to an APSI or to some professional development sponsored through College Board, the consultants will share tons of materials. But we are now at a point where there's some AP aligned textbooks as well.
Yeah, I love that though. The free is the key word, right? Like if Brian, you mentioned a lot of instructors in on this call. if you are an instructor and you want to go to your admin, they're going to always ask you, like, what are some costs behind implementing this course, right? Understanding, and Kelly's going to talk a little bit more about the resources later down, but understanding there's a tons of free resources out there, understanding that the textbooks are fairly similar. Those are all key aspects when trying to adopt this course. And then let's dive into the course content, right? This course is broken up into 4 different units. Functions, functions, functions. That's all that I see. I'm not a math person, so that's all that I see. And we asked higher ed, like, what's important? What do students need? And we developed a course around these measures, right? When you look at these 4 units, university stated that they need units 1 through 3. And the fourth unit just provides more flexibility. And Lee, I know you worked in developing this course. Can you talk a little bit more about the units and how they're structured and give us a little bit of further context on that flexibility with that 4th unit?
Yeah, so yes, that 4th unit was really originally part of the course, an exam description, part of the course framework. But during the higher education symposium that was held in November of 2022, there was about 100 or so educators there, college professors, math department chairs at universities. And we asked for their feedback related to the entire course framework, but specifically, they were thinking that Unit 4 really was not necessary for students coming into college, and that they could prepare them for those things that might be in Unit 4, whether it's parametrics or vectors or working with matrices. And so Unit 4 is actually not included on the AP Precalculus exam. However, we do support that unit. We do have videos for that unit. We do have questions in AP Classroom for that unit, so that schools that have those requirements to teach specific topics in Unit 4 can have the support that they need to do that. So that's how Unit 4 got to not be tested on the AP Precalculus exam, but is still part of the course framework.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that insight. It's nice to hear kind of behind the curtain of how these are developed. And that's kind of a side message that I always like to tell too. When we're developing these courses, when we're making changes, we're listening to all parties involved, whether that's high schools or also the universities that we partner with, gaining their insight, making sure we incorporate all that input into the courses themselves. But Kelly, what about you, right? From a more classroom perspective, what are you seeing in practice in your own classroom, but also in other classrooms, and how they're approaching this, understanding that units 1 through 3 are focused on in the assessment or in the exam, but unit 4, like Lee just mentioned, there's a little bit more flexibility. What are you seeing?
Well, one thing that I'd like to hone in on is the modeling aspect. So there are certain things that just spiral through the course. We talk about function behavior in the very beginning in Unit 1 when we're talking about polynomials. We expand that to exponential and logarithmic functions and then go on to trigonometric and polar functions. But throughout the course, we keep spiraling back to certain themes, one of which is model selection. And so when we're saying modeling, we're thinking about, well, here's some data. Which function model does this data best fit? And then we use technology and we don't use technology. So when I'm saying technology here, I'm saying, okay, why don't we perhaps put this data into our graphing technology and run a regression or a residual and test to see if this model actually works. So in thinking about your students that maybe haven't found the greatest success algebraically or with symbolic manipulation, the modeling aspect can really bring in students that have awareness of the world and can synthesize ideas, but maybe aren't rock stars at factoring, so there's a lot of opportunities for success with students that maybe, haven't been in the advanced track along the way mathematically, but they can actually get into, okay, let's test this data. Let's see if this fits a sinusoidal model versus a quadratic model. So that's been really fun. And it's been great to see the students get engaged, especially with the use of technology and the function model selection. So that's one thing. I really love this course because it has a little bit of everything. There's There's some pre-statistics in the course that I never really taught in a pre-calculus course before. So we could potentially have students going on taking stats and they know a little bit more about regressions and residuals. We have a topic on semi-log plots, which I was talking to an AP Bio teacher and telling him, yeah, we've got semi-logs in the AP Precalculus content. And he was like, that's fantastic, because in AP Bio, we talk about linearized data, and they have no idea what that means. But students that take AP Precalculus actually come in with some knowledge of what linearized data means through learning about semi-log plots. So it's kind of exciting. And I think it's, as we've said, it's a great precursor to other AP courses like AP Stats or AP Calc, but also it's just a great basic college level, college algebra course with trigonometry.
Nice. Perfect. No, that's great. And something that I think a lot of individuals in this call are probably thinking about is they want to set their students up for success, right? And when I say success, they probably mean in the exam itself. And again, I always point and I always like to throw out this little caveat. Ones and twos have a ton of value in them. And maybe that's a conversation that you can prep your students for, right? Like making sure that they understand this data, they understand how they're impacting their lives, regardless of what their score may be on that scale. But again, we love seeing those emails, right? We love getting those emails from students saying that they earned a 3 or they awarded a 3, and it's wonderful to hear. But we'd like to dive a little bit more into this, and I'd love to hear from both of your perspectives too. Can you guys talk a little bit more about the exam, and can you talk more about how you set individuals or how individuals can be set up for success?
Yeah, Dennis, I'll go first on that one. So I think it's really important for students to be exposed to multiple choice questions and free response questions earlier in the year. I actually took AP Calculus AB in high school, and I know our teacher gave us free response questions right from the beginning, as soon as there was things that we could do. And that kind of took the mystery out of the exam and the nervousness that you might have out of the exam. But with multiple choice items, those are often written based on common misconceptions. So one of the things that I would do, I actually used to teach AP statistics, is I would have students select an answer that they knew was wrong. So you find a multiple choice question, ask a student to pick a wrong answer and explain how they know that that answer is wrong, like what mistake might have been made to get to that answer. It's also really important to set your students up for success by not rushing early in the course. You might be thinking, oh my goodness, I need to get through all this material. I need to really rush through it. And they know units 1 and 2 because they kind of had some experience with that in their previous coursework, but don't rush units 1 and 2. Going slower initially will pay dividends when you get to unit 3.
Nice. No, I love that. That's wonderfully. I love that perspective of trying to find the wrong answer, right? Like that really improves their critical thinking, really helps them dive into those questions, and increases their understanding. What about you, Kelly? From doing it right now, what are you doing to set your students up for success?
So I've been using AP Classroom a ton, especially, I mean, think about the first 3 years, the course had never been run. So there wasn't really a lot of multiple choice AP aligned questions out there that were available other than in AP Classroom. So it's been really great to have so many questions, multiple choice and free response available to teachers in AP Classroom. We can cut and paste. We can assign the students questions directly through their laptops or Chromebooks. So there's a lot of flexibility with what we can do and a ton of questions in AP Classroom. Also in AP Classroom, there are progress checks that are formative assessments that teachers can assign to their students, or really students can just play with. And the progress checks have free response along the way. So in a formative way. So if a student only has learned, say, material in the first unit, there are free response questions in AP Classroom, which model the task model that students would see on the actual AP exam, but only with content that they've learned, say, in Unit 1. So AP Classroom has been a great resource in that regard. What I do with students is we'll have checkpoints along the way with algebraic skills, but then when we have summative assessments, it's more AP aligned. And I just want to throw out that 81% of the students that took the AP Precalculus exam last year earned a 3 or higher. So it's been, I mean, most students are finding success on the actual AP exam, and then potentially are able to get college credit for all that work.
Yeah, you stole my thunder for my slide a little bit further down.
Sorry, Dennis.
No big deal at all, but you're correct. I mean, that's definitely something that we want to hammer home for sure. Like we talked about, right? Like there's so many benefits of just switching your pre-calc to AP pre-calc, and there's not a lot of lift to give students those benefits. Kelly touched on the college credit. Ryan touched on typically a weighted GPA that students may have in their high school for taking an advanced coursework. But these are all huge benefits that we want our students to be exposed to and to be given. And then this, yes, exactly. Like we want students, again, to be successful. And AP Precalculus does that. This is the score distributions for 2025. And you can see that of all the courses, students tend to be more successful in pre-calc. There's a lot of different reasons for that, for sure, but it's nice to know that when you adopt this course, or as you adopt this course, that you're putting your students in a place or in a discipline that they can be successful in. And then how does that impact them, right? If someone's taking it as a junior, what does that do in terms of their confidence as a senior? If they took this as a senior, how are they approaching then that post-secondary or that next step in life, knowing that this AP course, right, which people may think is really difficult, they can be successful in. Again, though, little caveat, 1s and 2s, those 19% of individuals still got tons of benefits. And then here too, right? So we think about that. And even in that conversation that I had earlier this week, she was curious, like, I heard that this course isn't really accepted at a lot of different places in terms of college credit, but it is. Every university here within the state of Michigan, every state's a little bit different how they approach AP credit. But here in the state of Michigan, every university sets their own standard, and a lot of different institutions throughout the state of Michigan are accepting this because they know that this is college level math, that you guys, if you're a pre-calc teacher now, you guys are teaching college level math. So now they're giving individuals credit. You can see the breakdown here of the score needed on the far right, the credits earned, right? GVSU, you get a score of 3, you earn 5 credits. Think about that. Nowadays, that's probably what, like $2,000, if not more, thinking about that for one test, right? For a $100 test, that's pretty easy. And then it's equivalent to Math 124, right? You can see all the institutions, and this is just 5. I can't fit all of them on there, but you can see if you zoom out all these different colleges and universities throughout the state of Michigan that value the work that you're doing currently. We just got to give students the opportunity to take that assessment, to show to school, post-secondary institutions that they know this knowledge, that they have this knowledge, to give them credit, to save them money, to get them behind that I'm going to call it a burden. Not everybody thinks it's a burden. That burden of college level math, and move them on to that next step. And then here, same thing. We've been kind of talking about this. You can see those first 4 lines are about the same, right? Whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, or AP. But where the differences happen are on those bottom lines. You think about compared to college, Precalculus and AP Precalculus, almost 100 more hours of support of class time that a student gets. And you got to believe that if student individual has 100 plus or almost 100 more hours of class time, that they're going to be more likely to succeed, right? Smaller classrooms, I remember just being one in many in that lecture hall for math. GPA, we touched on that, college credit, and all these other supports that Kelly and Lee mentioned. It's just more time, more incentive, and more support to help these students be successful. And this is something that we love to see too, right? If you think about making a difference, we showed a little bit of data on this earlier, but who's taking this course, right? What doors does this course open? And here's just a couple. There's more that we could definitely highlight, but this is talking about first-gen students. I was a first-gen student. I have little kids now, and I know that my kids have a benefit having me gone through and also working within education, right? Post-secondary education too. And so this is a course that more first-gen students are taking. It's also a course that students who maybe hear that you should go into STEM because there's so many jobs into STEM, but then it's like computers and programming and coding, it may seem intimidating, but how do we give them a little foot in the door? And that's what this course is doing. For students who have never taken an AP STEM exam, this is their first one. They're getting a 3 or better, again, a lot of value 1s and 2s, but they're getting a 3 or better at an 80% clip. And then what does that do for them? Now that opens this door, this career path that they were intimidated by, that they thought they might not be successful in. They just succeeded, and now they're going to become robotics engineers or something along those lines because this was their first STEM course. Again, opening doors, providing more opportunities. And so now we're going to move on to teacher supports. And I know we kind of touched on this, but I'd love to expand. Kelly, I'd love to hear more from your perspective in your consultant role, but also within your course. Like, can you talk about some of those resources that you use and some that other individuals maybe have highlighted as being really effective?
Sure. So one thing though that I'd like to just piggyback off of what you're saying. So we're offering this course to students that may not have much experience with AP courses. The same thing can be said of the teachers that could possibly be teaching AP Precalculus. So a lot of the teachers that I work with in APSIs have never taught an AP course before, and that can be daunting. So, I mean, to think about that, there are teachers that are, oh, I don't want to teach an AP course. I don't, I'm afraid about the test, or, I have to change everything. And so I would just like to say to administrators or teachers listening, College Board knows that. And there are so many resources that have been put in place for AP Pre-Calc that I haven't really seen as an AP Calculus teacher. And I know Lee is gonna talk about some of those, but I will say, starting off with an APSI, it's a great way for teachers to spend 4 days either virtually or in person, just learning about all the topics in the course and exam description. There's time given for teachers to be able to plan not just assessments, but even their school calendar. Talking about assessments and lesson planning and giving teachers different instructional strategies. So we're having students that are sort of our non-traditional AP student, if you will. And so in our APSIs and even in College Board materials, we're thinking about ways that we can engage all students, not just students that have typically been successful in math. So a lot more getting up out of your seats, a lot more, so let's call it, I always get this backwards, low floor, high ceiling activities to get students engaged, all students engaged. So there's that. And Lee, I know she's going to tell us about some other professional learning that's offered for students, but there's not only AP Communities, which is a College Board sponsored page where once a teacher goes through the audit process and is teaching AP Precalculus, College Board has this AP community where teachers can ask questions and share resources. But there's also, believe it or not, a fantastic Facebook group that is moderated by consultants where I've used it myself. Let's say you're in first hour and a student says, well, why is it like this, Miss H? And you're like, give me a minute to think about that. You can run to the Facebook group and say, hey, why is it like this? Help me out. And within minutes, another teacher or another consultant will give you a good answer or give you something to think about with your kids. So there's a lot of supports. Also, there's mentoring. So there's like 1 hour a week. Teachers can sign up to work one-on-one with the consultant to ask questions or design assessments. So just keep in mind that I really feel like College Board has made more opportunities for AP Precalculus teachers, knowing that these teachers may not have had much experience with an AP course in the past. Lee, do you want to tell us your news?
I think we need to go to the slide about information with power hours.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we're ready for that one yet.
Yeah, we'll get there. But Kelly, I love that call out because that's something, I keep saying that students may be hesitant, like how do we open doors for students? But you're right. We run into teachers all the time. That teacher earlier this week was hesitant for a lot of different reasons, right? Again, it's daunting or can be daunting for students to think about AP, but teachers have that same perspective. And it's wonderful that you're just highlighting all the supports, all the resources that we have. And one thing that we always like to point out, and Kelly, I know you've mentioned this before, but AP Classroom, that's a huge, incredible resource for individuals. And not everybody maximizes as much as they can, or maybe should, but we always like to point this out that we've seen everybody wants their students to succeed. We've seen that students are more successful if teachers are more active and utilize AP Classroom more. And AP Classroom has tons of resources, right? Course guides, question banks. Kelly, you touched on a lot of this already, but just want to point this out for sure that individuals know that this exists. And we also have individuals, consultants, other resources and webinars to help you walk through all of these. So it's not just that you're given this, go ahead, go at it, but we help you navigate, help you learn how to best utilize these type of resources. And then now, Lee, we used to have these power hours, and I left this slide up just because this is something that maybe people have seen on the website. But Lee, you have some wonderful news for us, right?
Yes, I do. So Power Hours are now being called Topics with Content Experts. And this was such a successful series that we anticipate having this again for the 2026-2027 school year. And just a little bit more about the Topics with Content Experts. They're designed to explore just-in-time topics as the school year progresses. This year, there was 12 sessions, each of them being held 4 different times to match the needs of teachers, whether it's they're available on a Saturday morning or a Tuesday evening, that sort of thing. So there's multiple times when those are available. And I would say when I've attended those, there's usually been 40 to 60 teachers in attendance, and there's great support there. Kelly was mentioning the support with the online teacher community, but there's also great support during these power hours, topics with content experts. And there are 2 sessions remaining for this year. If you want to sign up for them just to see what they're all about, I did drop the link to the chat, or drop the link to that in the chat. We have pro tips for free response question 4 with the AP Precalculus exam review and strategies for responding to multiple choice questions. And then also new, this is brand new. This is now something that you are hearing about for the first time, and it's going to be announced in the AP Precalculus newsletter that is coming out either today or tomorrow. There is an adoption resource that's available called Chat with a Content Expert. And I'm going to drop the link for that in the chat. So if you want to go there, you can see what that's all about. But Chat with a Content Expert allows district leaders, school administrators, department heads, or teachers to schedule one-on-one Zoom chats with an AP Precalculus outreach consultant. So there's 4 different consultants that are listed on that page, and they each have areas of specialty. And if you have a specific question, you can sign up for a one-on-one Zoom meeting with one of those content experts. It's a great resource. I'm really looking forward to seeing how people use that resource to get their questions answered, because every school is different and you have those questions that you need to have answered on an individual basis.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it is exciting. I think it just opened up yesterday evening, right? And so it's wonderful to have that. And that's something that Chat with a Content Expert is something I would recommend everybody log into or get access to, because it's wonderful you get your own personal Kelly, right? So how great is that? Everybody needs a personal Kelly. And then also this, Kelly, you touched on this a little bit before, just the online teaching community. Can you speak a little bit more about just how they've helped you and how maybe you help other individuals too?
So there's a couple of resources. The teacher community is actually like a discussion board. It's sponsored by College Board. And again, once your teacher has approved, through the audit process and is teaching AP Precalculus, they have this resource. So teachers, and this is actually kind of true for the Facebook group as well, teachers are uploading instructional strategies or worksheets, or I was part of a group of consultants. We created a practice exam. We created all the multiple choice and free response, the scoring guidelines, and we've only published that through the College Board teacher community. We didn't want to put that out for the Facebook group. So there's actually, the College Board sponsored community, which sort of mirrors the Facebook group, but is a little bit more monitored, I guess, in a good way. I mean, monitored by Becky Barnes is a consultant that monitors that group and makes sure that everything is exactly the correct information. So there's that. And then again, there are so many resources that teachers are sharing with each other, really, because the first couple of years it was like, you know, we didn't have an aligned textbook. We needed multiple choice questions. And I guess I'll say just one other thing about AP Classroom. So I've taught AP Calculus for so long. There was no AP class. When I first started teaching AP Calculus, AP Classroom didn't exist. And then AP Classroom came out and I tried it a little bit, but I already had all these resources in place for my AP Calculus course. So I didn't really go back to AP Classroom. Then I started teaching AP Precalculus and I really needed resources. So I was kind of forced into using AP Classroom, and it was and is amazing. They're adding questions all the time. It really, so I guess I would say to teachers out there that maybe dabbled in AP Classroom a few years ago in a different course, and maybe thought, oh, you know, it's okay. I would definitely say, yes, go back and use AP Classroom, particularly for AP Pre-Calc, because it's a new course and it's been designed from the start to have AP Classroom, I guess, working alongside of the exam and the CED. So Dennis, does that answer your question about
Yeah,
materials?
no, that's
Okay.
perfect. And just making sure that, kind of like what you touched on a little bit earlier, Kelly, making sure that new teachers know that there's a strong community out there to support them, and really like a welcoming community, right? Everybody wants to support, everybody wants other students to succeed too. Another thing I want to touch on real quick is just pre-AP. Pre-AP coursework is to really prime the pump, honestly, to make sure that students are getting the preparation and the exposure that they need earlier to help you in terms of when they come to you during pre-calc. But I know that we're close to time. And what I want to do is open up the floor to questions. Are there any questions out there that you guys may have? Please pop them in the chat. I'm looking at it now. So I can see that a lot of them have been addressed, but if there's any other questions that anybody has, please drop them in there because, I mean, we have Kelly and we have Lee here and Ryan's here too. So really wonderful resources in terms of finding those. But while we wait for individuals to drop those questions in there, because I don't see any, while we wait for individuals to drop those questions in there, Lee and Kelly, any parting words, any thoughts about AP Pre-Calculus and why it's so beneficial for schools to adopt?
Yes, definitely. So AP Pre-Calculus will benefit all the students that take the course. So there's really no downside to doing this because it's truly designed to be accessible for all students. We definitely want you to reach out to us if you need more information or support. And I really encourage you to set up a time for a one-on-one Zoom chat with a content expert.
And it looks like, Dennis, I think Lee might be typing an answer to, I think we had one question in there. I know you mentioned the textbooks at the beginning, so it looks like she was able to answer that and get that cleared out, but I'm not seeing any in the Q&A right now.
And so,
Perfect, yeah.
Dennis, I would just like to add from a teacher perspective, it's been really fun to teach this course. It's fun to see my students have a deeper understanding of function behavior than just what they're learning from their book, to actually apply what they're learning in math to real world behavior and to real world data. It's been fun to employ more instructional strategies, to have kids think outside the box. It's just, in general, I see my students really engaging with the material more than just with, I guess, a class that's more algebra based or more symbolic manipulation based, if you will.
Nice. No, that's wonderful to hear. And my contact information is there. I've met with some of you already on this call, but always happy to reconnect. Always happy to highlight different resources or clarify any questions that you may have. You can also scan that QR code for more information about this course. But we want to be a resource. We want to help you. We want to make sure that your students are successful. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything in the future. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Kelly and to Lee, for sharing your expertise and for sharing your insight. Really appreciate your time.
And we will get the slide deck and video recap out to you probably by tomorrow. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.